Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our weekly review of how religion impacts humanity. This week's headlines. In Afghanistan, female Kabul government workers are told to stay home. Fighting off hunger under the Taliban. A doctor is sued in the first known challenge to the new Texas abortion law. The Supreme Court will hear arguments in the Mississippi abortion case, which challenges Roe versus Wade on December the 1st. Breakaway exvangelicals are growing in the USA. 90% of American atheists have been vaccinated, but only 57% of white evangelicals. An ancient tablet, stolen, then acquired by Hobby Lobby, will be returned to Iraq. Compulsory school worship undermines the new curriculum, Wales Humanists tell Senedd Committee. The Church of England spends millions, but fails to convert cash into congregations. And Kent Hovind is going to jail for assaulting his ex-girlfriend. Okay, the new Taliban mayor of Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, has told female workers to stay home unless their jobs cannot be filled by a man. Hamdullah Nomani said the Taliban found it necessary to stop women from working for a while. Since taking power, working women have been told to stay home until the security situation improves, and Taliban fighters have beaten women protesting against the all-male interim government. The Islamist group appears to have shut down the Women's Affairs Ministry and replaced it with a department that once enforced strict religious doctrines. And this weekend, secondary schools reopened, but only for boys and male teachers. The Taliban said it was working on reopening schools for girls. According to the Kabul mayor, about a third of the municipality's 3,000 workers are women. He said some would carry on working. For example, women work in the women's toilets in the city where men cannot go, he said. These policies have shattered the dreams of Afghanistan's airlines' cabin crews. See this video.
We've come to this abandoned house, which is now a safe house, where 11 remarkable Afghan women are now in hiding.
چون با بسیار زحمتی وظیفه رو ما به دست آوردیم تا که ما به این حد رسیدیم و فعلا هم آرزوهای ما از بین رفته.
یکی از آرزوهای ما بود از طفلی که من مهماندار شوم از دوران مکتب. بهترین روزهای بود که یعنی بهترین خاطرات داریم در داخل طیاره و فکر کنم شاید امو آخرین عکس بوده باشه. اصلا اشکایم سر میکرد، ایران مانده بودم کدام طرف من فرار کنم، چی رقم خود نجات بدم. یعنی یک شب بسیار دلخراش بود، یک شب بود که شاید من در تمام عمر فراموش نکنم، به خاطر از اینکه من هیچ وقت در یک حالت روبرو نشده بودم، حتی من در فیلم ندیده بودم.
ما امنیت جانی روی روانی هیچی نداریم. یعنی حتی اگه ما رو بگن بیاین برین، ما دیگه جرأت نمیکنیم که یونیفرم خود بپوشیم و در موتر دولتی بشینیم بریم طرف میدان در طیاره در پروازهای داخلی یا خارجی اشتراک کنیم.
That's your design?
Yes.
Conservative, but
Yeah.
very modern too.
I want to continue, but from that time that I know they didn't let anyone to wear this kind of clothes. So what should I create? What should I design for whom? Just I can design hijabs. That's all in this now. Who will support us?
Do you still have hope?
Yeah, I'm trying. I want to be strong. In the past, I worked for those women and girls, and I make the way for them that they should be strong. They should find their ways. So now I'm in here, and I should be more strong than past.
Live in desperate poverty in Afghanistan, a country that has received huge sums in foreign aid. The money left over that might help them, around $9 billion in central bank reserves, is frozen by the Americans to keep it away from the Taliban. The most common lament heard in Kabul in the last week was about the price of food and the desperation of parents who are struggling to feed their children. Food prices are rocketing. Millions struggle to feed their families. The World Food Programme estimates that 93% of Afghans are not getting enough food to eat. Before the Taliban seized control last month, the number was 80%. Markets have sprung up across the city as people who had managed to accumulate a few trappings of prosperity in the old Afghanistan sell their possessions to raise a little cash, mostly for food. I saw carts arriving carrying the contents of people's homes, from valuable carpets or TVs to jumbles of crockery and cutlery. One man was selling a rubber plant. Many were selling and few were buying. There isn't the cash. The sprawling second-hand markets are full of despair. Threats to personal freedom, girls' education, and the right of women to work have been condemned across the world. But the prospect of going to bed hungry has an urgency all of its own. That's a quote from the reporter in this video you're about to see now.
The Afghan army frequently accused the Taliban of firing from residential areas. Either way, civilians have often been caught in the middle of this conflict. Everywhere we go in this village, people are trying to show us signs of the war, where the army used to fire down on the bazaar, where the Taliban used to be based. This ceiling hit by bullets, that shop over there hit by a rocket. This man saying to come with him. The signs of destruction might not look that much, but they've had a devastating impact on people's lives. Now you've got peace, but what other challenges do you have here? And we are here, and I don't see any women around us. So is that because of the Taliban? In more conservative areas like this, social attitudes do align more closely with those of the Taliban. What local women think remains unclear.
A Texas doctor who admitted to breaking the state's new abortion legislation has been sued in what could be a test of how lawful the mandate is. Writing for the Washington Post, Alan Braid said he had carried out a termination on a woman who was in the early stages of her pregnancy, but beyond the state's new limit. Former lawyers in Arkansas and Illinois filed lawsuits against him on Monday. The new legislation bans abortions from as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy, and the law came into effect on the 1st of September, giving any individual from Texas or elsewhere the right to sue doctors who perform an abortion past the 6-week point. However, it doesn't allow the woman who got the procedure to be sued. The law bans terminations after the detection of what anti-abortion campaigners call a fetal heartbeat, something medical authorities say is misleading. Dr. Braid, who has been practicing medicine for nearly 50 years, wrote in an opinion column published on the weekend, "I acted because I had a duty of care to this patient, as I do for all patients, and because she has a fundamental right to receive this care. I fully understood that there could be legal consequences, but I wanted to make sure that Texas didn't get away with its bid to prevent this blatantly unconstitutional law from being tested," he wrote. This week's Deep Dive looks into abortion law in the USA with this video from 2019.
This bill does a really good job of protecting the most vulnerable members of our human family.
We are going to be shouting from the rooftops that abortion is still safe, legal, and accessible.
Abortion is back on the agenda in America, and it's got both sides energized. How have abortion laws changed in 2019? In May, Alabama approved a near outright abortion ban, including in cases of rape or incest. And 7 other states have passed heartbeat bills, which ban abortion as soon as a heartbeat can be detected. So far this year, more than 20 other states have introduced or proposed some form of restriction on abortion.
There is a heartbeat. This is a thriving, growing human person, and so we need to acknowledge that and protect that life as well.
I work as an abortion clinic escort in Huntsville, Alabama, and what we've seen is since these heartbeat bills and this legislation has started being passed across the United States, we've seen the activism and the threats from the anti-choice movement on the sidewalk ramp up.
What's the strategy?
This is part of a comprehensive and rather clever campaign by pro-life advocates. They have passed laws of different types in different states.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
The aim is to challenge Roe v. Wade, the 1973 ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court that legalized abortion. The procedure has been allowed only until viability, that is, the point at which a fetus is able to live outside the womb, generally between 24 and 28 weeks. In recent years, some states have tried to ban abortions in the second trimester, that's before viability. The heartbeat bills passed in 2019 would prohibit abortions around the 6-week mark, before most women even know they're pregnant. And the Alabama law now goes to the very beginning of a pregnancy, effectively banning abortion from just days after conception.
This one's different because it is a frontal attack on Roe v. Wade. It is clearly unconstitutional under the Supreme Court precedent.
So, will abortion be banned?
As Associate Justice of the Supreme Court,
President Trump appointed 2 strongly anti-abortion justices to the Supreme Court, giving conservatives a 5-4 majority. But it's likely to be Chief Justice John Roberts who decides whether to take up the Alabama case.
So the concern for pro-choice advocates in the country really is twofold. This is a direct assault, but it may not be the most serious threat. John Roberts could reject this, could even block it from being heard, but they could still grant review in these collateral attacks, chipping away, making it more difficult to get an abortion in various states. Roberts could very well sign off on that.
That would not make abortion illegal everywhere. It would leave it up to each state to decide when and how a woman could get an abortion.
Well, the Supreme Court is going to have that opportunity. It will hear oral judgments on December the 1st in a case that threatens to overturn the decades-old abortion protections established under Roe v. Wade. This case, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, takes aim at the Supreme Court precedent barring states from banning abortions prior to a fetus becoming viable or capable of living outside the womb. It centers on a 2018 law in Mississippi that bans most abortions after 15 weeks, a cutoff that is significantly earlier than the general fetal viability standard of around 22 weeks. A spate of abortion-related Supreme Court decisions in recent years have reaffirmed those protections, but the Mississippi case will be heard by a high court that grew sharply more conservative under Republican former President Donald Trump, who appointed 3 justices to the 9-seat bench. Last month, all of Trump's appointees, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, voted against a request to stop a highly restrictive abortion law in Texas from taking effect. The Texas law bans most abortions after 6 weeks. The 5-4 majority, which ruled without hearing oral arguments, declined to block the law on procedural grounds. Here is some background information about the Supreme Court.
Very much so, Shep, and here's why. For nearly those 50 years, ever since deciding Roe v. Wade in 1973, the Supreme Court has said that states cannot ban abortion before the fetus is viable, and that's generally considered to be about 23 weeks into the pregnancy. And under a consistent line of rulings since then, the court has said that states can impose restrictions on access to abortion services, but only if they don't create an undue burden on the abortion right. That's why the federal judge who first blocked the Mississippi law, Carlton Reeves, said this in his ruling. The state chose to pass a law it knew was unconstitutional to endorse a decades-long campaign fueled by national interest groups to ask the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. So now the court has agreed to take another look at that very issue, the core of Roe. And as you noted, the Mississippi law would ban nearly all abortions after 15 weeks. So the question is, can the states ban abortion before viability without violating the Constitution? You mentioned the court's current makeup, and that's important because 2 of the justices who consistently voted to uphold Roe in the past are now gone, Anthony Kennedy and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, replaced by Trump appointees Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. And this will be Justice Barrett's first abortion case as a Supreme Court justice. And abortion opponents are hoping that she'll help give them the majority they need. This court, by the way, will hear the case next term in the fall with a decision about a year from now, Shep.
Pete Williams, thank you.
Still in the States, even as evangelicals maintain their position as the most popular religion, a movement of self-described exvangelicals is breaking away, using social media to engage tens of thousands of former faithful. Donald Trump's presidency, as well as movements around LGBTQ rights, Me Too, and Black Lives Matter, drew more Americans into evangelical churches while pushing some existing members away. Blake Chastain, the exvangelical podcaster, who's also credited with starting the use of the hashtag exvangelical, tells in the old days people might meet at a bar and speak in hushed tones about how weird the church was. But now, Chastain says, those kinds of discussions are far more public and ripple across larger networks of people because of social media. There's a growing subculture of the deconstructed, a buzzword with a range of meanings from stepping back from a kind of Christian culture or politics to leaving organized religion altogether. Instagram accounts like Dirty Rotten Church Kids and Your Favourite Heretics are providing an online community for those questioning or rejecting the evangelical church tradition. Podcasts including Exvangelical, Almost Heretical, and Straight White American Jesus are garnering big followings. Google searches for religious drama and exvangelical are on the rise, according to Google Trends. There were always diverse views among evangelicals, but Trump's 4 years in the White House made painfully clear just how deep those divisions ran, says author Kristin Demez. And still in the USA, a new Pew Research Center survey shows that the vaccination rate among white evangelical Protestants is only 57%, while atheists are at 90% and agnostics at 84%. What can we conclude from that? Well, possibly that the non-religious have a healthy respect for the scientific process, while white evangelicals prefer myths, propaganda, or right-wing conspiracies. Unfortunately, atheists and agnostics only make up about 8% of the population, so the vaccine resistors are dragging the country down. A 3,500-year-old clay tablet that was looted from an Iraqi museum 30 years ago is headed back to Iraq. Known as the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet, it was acquired by the company Hobby Lobby in 2014 for display in their Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. But US authorities seized it in 2019, saying it was stolen and needed to be returned. That return is happening on Thursday at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. It is part of a group of about 17,000 looted antiquities that the US has agreed to return to Iraq. The tablet measures 5 by 6 inches. It features inscriptions in Sumerian, the language of the ancient Mesopotamian civilization, and the text includes a section of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a poem believed to have been written at least 4,000 years ago. Hobby Lobby's owners are also the founders of the Museum of the Bible. The museum was opened in 2017, and Hobby Lobby President Steve Green began collecting artifacts in 2009, but he admits he knew little about collecting early on and didn't adequately make sure that he was not buying stolen items. In 2017, Hobby Lobby agreed to pay a $3 million fine in a settlement with the Justice Department and agreed to return thousands of clay tablets that were illegally imported. The requirement for schools to carry out a daily act of Christian worship will undermine the aims of the new curriculum for Wales and should be scrapped in favour of inclusive assemblies, Wales Humanists has told a Senedd Committee. The new curriculum for Wales is due to come into force from 2022. It explicitly requires schools to teach about non-religious perspectives like humanism alongside world religions in religion, values and ethics, RVE, lessons. This teaching must be done in an objective, critical and pluralistic way. But in a response to a consultation on the issues to the Children, Young People and Education Committee, Wales Humanists said that the worship law will impair the implementation of the RVE curriculum. This is because, by requiring Christian prayer, it seeks to impose a particular religious perspective on pupils. The UK is the only sovereign state in the world where Christian worship is imposed as standard in all schools, including those without a religious character. Parents are legally permitted to withdraw their children from these sessions, and in England and Wales, sixth formers may withdraw themselves. But the process can be difficult and isolating, and withdrawn children are rarely provided with a meaningful alternative. What's more, according to a recent YouGov poll, most parents, 65%, aren't aware of the law. This makes it extremely unlikely that they will be able to exercise their rights on the matter. When made aware of the law, 60% of parents think it shouldn't be enforced. Last week, a bill proposing to replace compulsory worship with inclusive assemblies that are suitable for pupils from all backgrounds, regardless of religion or belief, passed its second stage in the House of Lords. The majority of peers spoke in support of the change to the bill, which is sponsored by Baroness Burt. More than £240 million invested by the Church of England to arrest the decline in worship has not so far succeeded in turning the situation around, the Archbishop of Canterbury has said. Figures presented to the General Synod this year show that £248 million was given out between 2017 and 2020 as part of the Church's Renewal and Reform programme to attract new worshippers. What a waste of money. Young Earth creationist and owner of Dinosaur Adventureland, where dinosaurs and the Bible meet, Kent Hovind, there he is, has been jailed for assaulting his ex-girlfriend. On Tuesday, a judge sentenced him to 1 year in jail, commuted to 30 days imprisonment and a year of unsupervised probation, and he must also hand in all firearms and is forbidden from contacting the woman Cindy Lincoln. My guest on Free Thought Hour this week is Nuria Khan, a brave, campaigning young ex-Muslim woman who has her own channel called Holy Humanist. This is a live Q&A show, so stay tuned on this channel and come and ask her some questions. It will be starting in a few minutes. We will be back with our weekly news review on all our platforms at the same time next week. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, set the notifications, etc. Thank you for watching.